Seattle Audubon placed kiosks with questionnaires for people to vote in several city parks over about a month time. And the vote came out that people really identified the great blue heron as the icon of Seattle. So working with Peter Steinbrueck and the city council and the mayor, it was officially designated as Seattle's official bird.
Herons in particular are just impressive birds. Their size, wingspan about 6 feet. They stand over 3 feet tall.
I think it's pretty surprising for most people to actually understand that either how or why these birds are nesting in colonies, because such a big bird, you kind of picture it either hunkered down in a little ravine or maybe along a stream. But in general, you can see colonies from 2 or 3 nesting pairs all the way up to 130 nesting pairs in the Puget Sound region.
This is the Black River Riparian Forest. It's a city park within the city of Renton, set aside primarily because of the heron colony, which is the largest heron colony in the King, Snohomish, and Pierce County area. A lot of new nests were built this year, so it's somewhere in the range of 100 to 130. Each nest producing around 3 birds that will fledge, and so during the course of a couple of months, we'll have possibly 350 fledglings who will spend time on this pond, probably several weeks, and so it's a great show.
Great blue herons generally use 2 different techniques for hunting and for getting their prey. Either they'll stand motionless, and in that case, they're basically just waiting for a fish to go by or whatever their prey is at that time to go by. So if a fish goes by, it'll go from this sort of coiled heron to the striking heron with the long neck and the head down into the water. And the other technique that they'll use to hunt is that they'll basically just kind of slowly wade through the water into different areas and try to scare fish out from hiding. In general, great blue herons will probably feed on fish in the range of 2 to 4 inches, somewhere along those lines. But they can swallow sunfish or other fish that are a little bit larger, maybe 2 to 3 times the width of their neck. If they get a fish that's either too big or has spikes or isn't going down relatively easily, they'll pretty much beat the fish up. So they'll let it go real quickly and then jab at it again and sort of throw it up a little bit and maybe hit it again with its bill. So it can take larger fish and it can take aggressive fish and fish with defense mechanisms, but it just takes a little bit more effort on their part. In general, you have colonies that are used year after year, so the birds are coming back to a lot of the same areas. So about mid-February, the birds start to show up, and the males will start competing against each other for nesting space, oftentimes on the older nests. And then, once the females are becoming a little bit more involved, a little bit more integrated into the area, then the males will start doing their displays and doing everything they can, squawking and making their noises to try to attract the females into their nest. Once the female is attracted, then they really start to improve their nest, and within a week they've got this 3 to 4 foot wide, 1 to 2 feet deep nests. The males will go out and collect all of the sticks, some moss maybe. They will bring the sticks back, and the female actually in general will put the nest together. Within a couple days to a couple weeks they'll lay eggs, and in general a great blue heron probably has 3 to 5 eggs. It takes about 4 weeks, 28 days for the eggs to actually be incubated and hatch. Once the eggs are hatched, for the first week, the adults are very attentive, very present, keeping them fed, and for the most part just guarding the young, because either neighboring herons or eagles or crows or gulls would be happy to come in and grab themselves a quick meal.
What happens when the eagle encroaches into the colony, the herons flush into the air. Now, when you're talking about the largest colony in the area, you're talking about a couple of hundred herons all coming up into the sky at the same time. And so the eagle begins to attack the eggs going from nest to nest. And the herons do a strange thing. Eventually they settle down, they come back and repopulate the nest, even though the eagle is there. In fact, an adult heron did intimidate and even attack the eagle by spreading his feathers in all possible directions, and actually jumped into the nest and drove off the eagle. That was a very memorable moment for me, and I saw that eagle. He flew across the pond, not to be seen again that day.
After, I'd say, the first 2 weeks, then the young start to get a little bit more mobile, and the adults get a little bit less attentive. So one of them might spend more time out hunting while the other one is kind of bopping around the colony or down hunting itself. Between 4 and 6 weeks, the younger birds start to, get out of the nest a little bit, walk up and down the limbs, maybe start to move their wings around a little bit. Well, when the adult great blue herons go out, get the prey, come back with the food, they won't actually come immediately to the nest. So they will come probably 2 to 5 feet away from the nest and really just hang out and sit there digesting a little bit preliminarily the food. Probably, 3-5 minutes afterward, they'll come over to the nest, and what the young will do is they'll try to grab onto the adult bill. And so you've got, maybe 4, maybe 5 juvenile herons in the nest grabbing onto the same bill at once. And so the adult will regurgitate whatever it just got, whether it's a fish or a vole, to the young. I think about probably week 4, at the end of week 4, the juvenile herons will start to move around in and outside of the nest on the limbs. And I think at about 8 weeks they start to fly from branch to branch within the colony. But they've got to be pretty careful, because if they fall down to the ground, it's pretty much out of the mind of the adult heron. If people find a bird that really seems to be struggling, that has a broken wing or something, but seems otherwise healthy, the best thing to do is probably call one of the rehab centers, whether it be PAWS or SARVI or the Humane Society. And some people will try to wrap the bird up in a towel and put it in a box or put it in a cage. And I think if you don't have experience doing that, it's probably not the best idea, because herons have about a 6 to 10-inch bill, and they can certainly do some damage with their bill. And I read one account of somebody who had boxed up a heron, put it in a large refrigerator box or something like that, and had wrapped it up and had poked holes in the box for the heron to see out of and be able to breathe. And this person had peeked into the box and got the bill right in the face.
We see a fair number of adult herons that have been hit by cars. We also see a fair number of birds that have injuries that are the result of fishing gear, like they sometimes become entangled in it as they wade in the water, or if somebody has left a baited hook in the water. We've also seen a fair number of herons that were intentionally harmed by people. The birds usually have penetrating wounds and broken bones due to pellets from air rifles, or sometimes entry and exit wounds from bullets. And herons do sometimes come into conflict with people in backyards when they visit decorative ponds and eat goldfish. There are many ways to discourage them from doing that, but oftentimes people look for what they think is the easiest solution. When a heron arrives at the center, first thing we need to do is stabilize the bird. Oftentimes they have serious injuries and they may be in shock. So once we get the bird worked up on fluids and medications to stabilize it, it receives a full physical examination. Herons have very large bills. They use them for catching fish, and they can also be used as a weapon. So when we're handling herons, we wear eye protection at all times, and we also keep them covered with a sheet so they don't see us. It reduces their stress level and also makes things safer for the handling. Once all of the bird's injuries are assessed, 2 things may happen. It may be a bird that there's nothing we can do for, like if it has a badly fractured wing that will never heal properly and the bird will never fly, our only option may be to provide that bird with a humane euthanasia. But if it's an injury we can work with, then we will come up with a treatment plan for it. Once it is back to full function, then we will put it out into a large pen where it can strengthen its flight muscles and get ready to return to the wild.
One of the things that Seattle Audubon is doing to protect great blue herons is we're working with other organizations to map out the critical heron habitat throughout King, Pierce, and Snohomish counties. We've developed this mapping system to identify what characteristics are important to herons for feeding, for nesting, etc. And then we find out which areas are already protected, which areas need to be protected, and hopefully we can work to protect those areas, whether it's through rules and regulations or through conservation easements or through working with some of the land conservancies. The Cascade Land Conservancy is one group we work with to actually acquire those habitats.
When we look at animals in the wild, we think a heron's a heron, or a raccoon's a raccoon. But when you get to see them close up, you really do start to appreciate that they're as much individuals as we are.
I think it has immeasurable value for citizens in this area to come here and witness this ongoing saga.
I think the heron is a really neat example of a bird that brings people and wildlife and the natural environment together. It's not my favorite bird personally, which is okay. I wanted the surf scoter to be Seattle's official city bird, so don't think that was very successful. But I think it's a really good example of a bird that attracts people's interest. It gets people more involved and more interested in wildlife. So people see this massive bird that looks a little bit like a pterodactyl flying through the sky, and they get interested in birds and wildlife and they want to learn more. For me, it's really the idea of something that has an emotional tie to people in a community, and as a result, hopefully leads them to want to protect that species as well as other species.
At some point in our history in competition, there was a sense that women, there was just a limit of what women could do. They could only run so much, jump so high. It was a societal thing that occurred, and then we broke out of that. I think it began with the Second World War.
On the home front, women enlist for less glamorous, less hazardous, but equally important work in industry.
And they were working, and they started their softball leagues, and they started their basketball leagues. My first team was called the Glendale Sweethearts. We were a terrific softball team, rarely lost a game. The next level was really the professional level. So ultimately, I played third base for the A1 Queens.
There's something special about women when they compete, and I think it's because they still compete because, bottom line, they love the game and they love the opportunity. They've never taken for granted this tremendous opportunity that we have to compete.
Where competition, I think, is healthy is in sports. I don't think it's healthy in a lot of other places in life. So I get to make the choice of I'm going to be competitive, I'm going to try and beat that person in a venue where it's appropriate.
I was hooked from the beginning. And I only got to play 2 years of high school basketball in the 60s. There were very, very limited programs for girls. In fact, when I was in junior high, I lived in Alabama, it was against the law for girls to play basketball.
Before Title IX, there really wasn't anything except PE classes for girls.
Before, I got to school, I always wanted to play Little League like my brother, but, girls couldn't play Little League.
When I grew up in the public school system, we didn't have organized high school programs till my senior year.
We made our own uniforms. My freshman year, we went to our track meets in a 1953 Dodge Coronet that was painted red, white, and blue. And the track team was pretty small. We all fit in the car and taped our gear to the outside of the car. I always could feel the difference in the fact that the guys, they got the, transportation, they got meals. Pretty much, if you were an athlete on a ride and you were a male athlete, you got everything handed to you.
For some individuals, it's been hard to grasp the concept that we are going to be equitable and we are going to be fair, when for so long that was not the case.
My stepmother at the time looked at my hands the first time she saw me when I started rowing and said, "Ew, look at your calluses. What boy would want to hold your hand?" And I'm like, oh my God, like something's missing here. Even my mother would, look at me and go, "Well, I'm glad you're not as big as some of those other girls." And I'm, of course, wishing I was 5'10" so I could, be a little more competitive. So on that level, it was pretty painful. Those are the subtle ways that girls are excluded or in some ways suppressed. Like, oh, you're not going to look pretty. I mean, we had so much of that. Are you going to still look good if you have muscles?
I'm not sure at the time I realized that it was discrimination. I do know now that when I competed in basketball, I was the leading scorer of the team for 3 years, the third woman inducted into the Hall of Fame, and was a pretty talented athlete for that era. What I realized as I got through school was that the 15th player on the men's team had his entire education paid for, and I didn't have one penny of my education paid for.
We played 6-man basketball instead of 5-man basketball because they thought that women couldn't handle, running up and down the court. So it was like you'd have 2 stationary guards that played half court on the defensive side and 2 stationary forwards that played offense on the other side. And then there was 2 what they called rovers who actually moved the whole court.
The only sport we had was basketball. We had very little access to the facility. We did not have a locker room. My locker was a nail nailed on the wall.
There is a belief that men are superior to women. I don't know how else to say it. And as long as that exists, that what follows from there is that men should have access to resources or more access.
When I went to college in the early 70s, we still did not have any college intercollegiate teams for girls. So it was like, okay, I can't play anymore, but what can I do? I can coach. And not only can I coach, I can start teams where there have never been teams before. And they said, well, you know, if you want to have a team, fine. There's no budget, there's no resources, can't promise you access to the facility. The last thing I'm going to do is say, what do you mean we can't have a team? Sure, we're going to have a team. We're not going to have a team, we're going to have 3 teams. We had no uniforms, we had no travel budget. We didn't spend the night in a hotel. We'd get in my car and drive, play the game, and then drive back. If we got to spend the night, it would be because we took our bedrolls and slept either on the gym floor where we played, or sometimes the coach that was hosting, like if it was a tournament, we'd sleep on her living room floor.
That is the terrible thing about discrimination. It limits the person's opportunity. That is discrimination.
That's the real heart and soul of Title IX, is the fairness of having an opportunity to compete.
Basically, Title IX says that you cannot discriminate in any areas related to sex or gender or in any environment where educational funds are involved. And for some reason, it kind of all zeroed in on sports.
I had a lot of work to do here, I thought, you know, to make things equal. So they had equal training facilities and equal practice schedules and equal length of schedules, and same as everybody else had always had.
Title IX really affected the colleges and high schools, and the opportunity to not only play, but to receive the reasonable resources and scholarships.
One of the girls that I played basketball with in high school, tremendous athlete, but no funds to go to college. And she wasn't probably the best student in the world, but she could have, if she had gotten a scholarship, she could have gotten an education.
Prior to the passage of Title IX, that happened all the time, that many young girls who were very talented athletically did not have that opportunity. They would not be able to go to college, they would not be able to compete at the highest level, and they would not graduate from college.
When I was in 8th grade, that was about 1976, and I believe that's when Title IX really began. That was the first year at our junior high here that we had team sports for girls. And I remember about 60 girls turned out for one basketball team. So the coach figured out a way to get everybody in all the games, but you only played maybe 2 minutes of one quarter for one game.
After Title IX passed, they bought our shoes, we got brand new uniforms, sweats.
It's been obviously the most beneficial thing that's ever happened to women, and in athletics it's been the most controversial.
In the initial battle when Title IX was passed, there was a sense on the part of men in athletics that the whole world was going to fall apart because now resources were going to have to be provided for women's programs.
Probably the biggest galvanizer for me was the way the guys treated us. I had never been treated by another human being the way they treated us. You know, that for me was so upsetting. Yale really was just recently co-ed. When I went there, it was about 1/3 women. And the Yale Boathouse was really the premier facility for the Yale crew, although it was really the facility for the men's crew. The women's boats were kind of squeezed in among the men's boats. The men had a nice locker room, they had showers, they had everything they needed. The women had nothing. And the heavyweight men at Yale in the early 70s were terrible. They lost so many races. And one of the things that happened was that the women, as the program began, were very good from the beginning. The men would say things like, the competition isn't as deep, You know, your race is shorter. That's why it's easier for you to win. The men literally would call the women names. We were called sweat hugs, we were called cracks, they would write it of the trailer. I mean, there was abuse that went on. But I always felt really humiliated. Like I must have done something wrong to deserve this. And I think that's the worst part of it. One of the big things about my surviving at Yale was being among a group of women who liked each other, cared about each other, absolutely wanted to accomplish something together, but there was a unit of us, and that gave us, I think, a lot more strength than having to fight this individually. And Chris Ernst, who was captain of the women's crew in 1975, and Ann Warner, who was a junior at that point, were really the people who were aware of what was going on in the larger world with respect to Title IX. And Chris pretty much pulled it out and said, look, the university is out of compliance and we're tired of waiting. We were going to take a stand on this and do this protest. And she wrote out the words of the protest, and we decided that we would write Title IX on our backs in Yale blue, and we would put on our Yale Women's Crew sweats, and we were going to go to the office of Joni Barnett, who was at that point the head of women's athletics. Chris called up the Yale Daily News and the New York Times. So we went into Joni Barnett's office. Chris had probably made an appointment. We went in, we took off our clothes. And then before Chris read the statement, Joni Barnett looked at the guy who was there and said, do you want him in here? And Chris is like, be quiet, listen to what we have to say. She read the statement, put on our sweats, and left. And that was it. But it hit the first page of the second section of the New York Times the next day. It went out on the AP Wire. It was all over immediately. And Yale was totally embarrassed. They were really upset that our coach hadn't controlled us. Our coach had known nothing about it, and he was upset because he felt in the middle. But the truth was that if we had told him and he had tried to stop it, it wouldn't have happened. And the next year they started construction on an addition to the boathouse.
The progress has been painfully slow, much slower than any of us had intended.
Anytime you have change and you have a lot of the old school still there, they're going to drag their feet. They remember how it used to be and how they had all the funds, and basically they don't want to share their sandbox.
There are many times that Title IX pits men against women. And it's probably, if you ask me, one of the things that makes me most sad about Title IX.
I think it's always going to be a battle for us to continue to work for total equality, total equity, where our coaches are paid the same, where our athletes receive the same resources, both male and female.
The intent of Title IX was never to eliminate opportunity for men. It was to create opportunity for women.
Women are not the reason that some men's sports are cut. I mean, they have just decided, instead of taking 10 or 15 scholarships away from football so that we can continue to have the wrestling team or the baseball team, we've opted to keep all of those resources in football, and so you have to suffer. I don't see it as a male-female thing. I see it as a way you allocate the resources that you have for your male athletes.
Everybody has the right to the same opportunity. I think any little girl out there has what it takes to be, as good an athlete as any boy.
I think probably the greatest improvement I've seen, though, is that it's acceptable, it's okay, it's good. No, it's great for girls, little girls, to play sports, to be aggressive, to be competitive, to be physical. And that's probably the biggest change of all that I've seen.
I play basketball, baseball.
I play basketball, baseball, volleyball, and track.
I play soccer, and I do a lot of track.
The girls today, it's an expectation now. They expect to have teams to participate in. And in fact, some of the best supporters of the girls' programs are the dads, really.
I think my dad motivates me a lot, and I think because he taught me all about sports, and I think having sports and having him there pushing me motivates me a lot because I want to show him that I can do it and that what he taught me was beneficial to me. I think you should have the right to play sports, and I also think it's a privilege to be on a team and have the opportunity to do that.
Here we go. Hey! Well, look at you now. On the upside of down. Has this been a total waste of time? You wanna answer back, but you think for your speed. This is going to lead to something much bigger.
I feel like I've accomplished good stuff, and when I lose, it doesn't happen very often. But when I do lose against somebody, it's just a good game, and I just go and try again.
Excuse me, but could you move your display? I can't get down this aisle.
You know I would, but it's really heavy. We're not set up for wheelchairs in here.
Thanks for coming in, but we filled the job this morning.
I called just an hour ago when you said to come on in.
I don't recall saying that. You must be mistaken.
Discrimination doesn't always look like this, but it does always hurt. Call the Seattle Office for Civil Rights at 206-684-4500 today.
I called about the apartment.
Sorry, we don't allow children here.
But she's a quiet kid.
Sure, but you'll still have to find a place that takes children.
I just signed my home loan papers.
Man, you paid a bunch in fees. I got the same interest rate and my closing costs weren't nearly this high.
I asked questions, never had a credit problem. It can't be because of my color, can it?
Discrimination doesn't always look like this, but it does always hurt. Call the Seattle Office for Civil Rights at 684-4500.
This growth brought with it the need for new homes
watershed shows the course of the creek from the headwaters to its outflow.
To get a better understanding of where we're going, let's start right here. This is Rocks Hill Park. This is the headwaters of Longfellow Creek. And for those of you who are not familiar with the area, this is just south of Westwood Village in West Seattle. It's hard to imagine that Rocks Hill Park and the nearby Westwood Village shopping center were all once part of a giant marsh and the beginning of the creek. Today the wetland is gone, but its legacy remains. Even though the marsh was filled in with dirt, the grass field is still completely saturated with water and too wet to walk through or play sports. Public and private agencies are attempting to reverse the missteps of the past by restoring the most soggy parts of the playfield back into a natural wetland, returning native plants and trees. This small wetland will help Longfellow Creek's headwaters to do what it does best: collect water runoff and slowly absorb it back into the ground. A little further down the Delridge Basin at Chief Sealth High School, where the creek first daylights, students learn about the riparian or creekside environment. Teachers and students at Chief Sealth are taking advantage of the creek green space which runs along the high school boundary. Science classes use the area as a living classroom, learning about the natural environment and helping to restore the creek.
The students are learning that they have a very important role in their community, and that is to become a steward for their own backyard, so to speak.
She gives me everything that I need. She's a sight and a sound and a fury. Restoring salmon habitat is a subject on the top of many people's minds these days. It's another issue bringing the community together around the creek. As we move down the creek to Webster Street, community activists have been working together with city staff to balance the human needs of the neighborhood with the city's need to provide adequate drainage for stormwater runoff. She's a mighty good creek, but she runs underground at the Kmart lot. Tunnel a creek and a ticky-tacky sweater, whatever happened to Mama? One of the biggest threats to the creek habitat is fast-flowing water caused by impervious surfaces. It's estimated that about half of Seattle is covered by impervious surfaces like streets, parking lots, rooftops, and other features of our built environment. Rainwater that used to soak into the ground to replenish groundwater supplies now flows across roofs and streets on its way to the creek. Even minor rain showers now cause large volumes of water to flow into the creek, flushing away plants, bugs, fish, and sometimes people's backyards. At Webster Street, Seattle Public Utilities is redesigning the existing detention pond to slow down the rate at which stormwater enters Longfellow Creek. A key aspect of the project includes creating additional recreational opportunities for the surrounding community.
SPU really listened to the neighborhood when we said we didn't want more impervious surface there. We want this to be an environmentally friendly area that's a good addition to the neighborhood through park usable land, and also to be safe for people when the creek is high.
Yummy! That is so good! This is one of my favorite places along the creek. This is our community garden. I bought this place because I wanted to preserve open space for the people and the wildlife in this community. I wanted to help build a strong community here in the Delridge Valley, and we have a lot of work to do, but I'm sure we're all up to the task. Much of the creek banks lost their tree cover over the years as valuable conifers were logged by early settlers. Seattle Public Utilities and the Parks Department are taking the lead to reestablish native plants along stream banks, providing much-needed shade for salmon habitat and to prevent soil erosion.
But sometimes even beauty can be deceiving, like our next stop, the WPA Dam located in the West Seattle Golf Course.
Hidden among the fairways and greens of the West Seattle Golf Course, Longfellow Creek continues its journey to Elliott Bay. Come on, let's go! Looks pretty, doesn't it? This peaceful setting is one of the most untouched sections remaining along Longfellow Creek. You may think this is an ideal place for returning salmon to spawn, and it is. However, there's this dam. This dam was built by the WPA during the Great Depression, and it acts as a wall preventing the salmon from getting further upstream to the prime spawning habitat. That's why Seattle Public Utility is going to be working with the Parks Department to build a fish ladder. The ladder is going to be similar to the one on Fauntleroy Creek by the ferry dock, and it'll allow the fish to pass further upstream.
We don't want to destroy the dam, but we are trying to find creative ways to allow fish to get behind it, which would open up about another 1.5 miles of stream for salmon passage.
But salmon are just one indicator of the overall health of the creek. This stretch is also the home to many birds and other animals. While the fish ladder is a simple step to opening up more pristine habitat to salmon, at Yancey Street, Seattle Public Utilities is recreating salmon habitat from the stream bed up.
The creek bottom is wide and flat and doesn't provide a good habitat for fish. There's only some roots hanging out here. What we need is some plants that can grow out over the water, provide some cover where the fish can hide. And we need more depth to the water so that the salmon can come up during the fall when they're swimming up here. Right now it's pretty hard for them to struggle up against this very shallow, fast-running water. So our project would put a lot of structure in here with logs and so on to narrow up the channel and cause it to be a little bit deeper and easier for the fish to swim up through.
Yancey Street is a very ambitious project that will also restore boulders, stream gravel, woody logs for shade, and resting pools to the natural environment, all critically necessary for salmon habitat. After fighting their way up a 3,300-foot culvert from the mouth of the creek at Elliott Bay, Yancey Street is the first stretch of creek open to daylight. Returning salmon will appreciate the new improved environment. Nothing is easy in the life of Longfellow Creek, even as we follow the final leg of the creek to its mouth at Elliott Bay. This is the last place Longfellow Creek flows above ground. Here the creek enters a culvert, travels underneath the Birmingham Steel Mill, and empties into Elliott Bay.
Well, here we are at the end of the creek. I'm standing here on top of this culvert where the creek empties out through this grate and into Elliott Bay. But it's not just an end, it's also a beginning. A chance for us to realize and recognize the importance of not just Longfellow Creek, but all of our neighborhood creeks. We can make a difference, just like the people you met today.
What's next for Longfellow Creek? Find out more. Learn about the creek, upcoming projects, and volunteer opportunities. What you can do to help restore the creek by calling Seattle Public Utilities at 206-684-7655 or check out our Urban Creeks Legacy website. And for more information on what you can do to help salmon, call 1-800-SALMON-9.